The low bass vibrated under my feet. The crowd murmured like waves. The clock on the LED face jumped with each tick, tick. Times Square was counting down to the launch of House Voss, and the moment the family photo lit up, I saw myself cut out of the frame, an empty space at Ethan's left shoulder. Without her, the picture looks cleaner, Vivian whispered to him, thinking the neon would swallow that sentence. I took a deep breath, placed my hand on my chest to bring my heartbeat back. They erased me from the family photo, but in 47 seconds, Times Square itself will put me back. Not because they changed their minds, but because of the rights clause I myself wrote, signed, and sent last month. A clause requiring full depiction of confirmed members in the image sponsorship. I am Maya. I stand in the middle of the square I walk through every night to ease my fatigue and realize one thing. Sometimes healing is not hoping someone apologizes, but letting the truth appear at the right time, in the right place. I text Jules. Check USB. He looked up, gave a small nod to Marcus, the media partner, and then the USB was plugged into the backup system. A small window appeared like a door opening amid the lights. The image rights annotation file, the chain of confirmation emails, and the original photo with me in it. 10, 9, 8. I close my eyes for half a second, whisper to myself, enough. You are at Revenge and Resolve, where cracks turn into paths. If you believe the truth has its own voice, stay with me until the end of this twist. When the countdown hits 0, we will see who truly belongs in the frame. Please subscribe. Hit like, so the story reaches those who need it, and comment, I'm in, so I know you're standing next to me in this square. Thank you for lending me your eyes and your heart. We begin. Rewind 24 hours before that moment. In Bushwick, there is always the smell of freshly roasted coffee and brick walls warm like the back of a sleeping cat. My studio is small, low-ceilinged, an old photo printer wheezing, a row of vintage lenses lying in a dark wooden box, each carrying scratches that tell the story of time. I open the window, let the sounds of delivery trucks mixed with people calling to one another on the street slip in. Then brew a pour-over, drip a few drops onto my wrist, a tiny ritual to know I'm still here, still awake. On the table is a notebook with its cover taped in silver duct tape. I jot a few lines before heading out. Day, test look shoot, approve hero image. Remind myself, kindness first, beauty after. At the bodega on the corner, the barista in a beanie smiles from afar. Maya, your usual. I nod. Take the hot egg and cheese in wax paper. Inhale the butter and black pepper like breathing the whole morning into my body. I came to New York with a camera and a first contract I promised myself. Never sell the soul, only license usage. In this city, everyone is eager to have a place to stand. As for me, I want a straight line. Work decently, sign clearly, let the photograph travel far without trading away my name. I swipe a frayed-edged Metro card, head down to the train, sit next to a woman hugging a hot pizza box, the smell of oregano slipping into my coat. Up on Lafayette Street, drizzle dusts my wrist, just enough to remember I'm inherently fragile. I step into Voss's Soho showroom. Cool cement floors, the pre-fall racks hanging in straight rows by color chart, a few models trying looks, buttons clacking like a metronome. Jules pushes the backstage door, hands me a water bottle. NYC rule number 1. Keep receipts. I laugh. Already uploaded USCO and model release. He gives a thumbs up, as if amid the flood of flashes and review schedules, the two of us were still keeping one private thing, disciplined kindness. Ethan comes out of the lighting area, shirt sleeves rolled, eyes smiling gently. You're part of my family. The sentence falls soft as silk. Vivian stands behind, cool perfume, lips lightly curved. Part of the campaign, dear. I don't answer, only tug the model's shoulders straighter, remind her to exhale once. A small trick so the body tenses less before the lens. I always remind myself, the job is to make things beautiful, but first it is to let everyone breathe. At noon, I sit on the floor by the accessories rack, finish the other half of the egg and cheese, tick the checklist. Light, frame, credit wording. Slack buzzes on my phone. Voss Times Square, hero image final. I watch the message light up amid a flood of other notifications, feel my heart jab once. Not out of ambition, but because years of shooting in wind and rain suddenly touch a very large corner of the sky. I don't dream that the Times Square lights will call my name. I dream that the clauses I drafted, lines that seem dry, will keep the photo intact with real people. Amid heels tapping the floor and zippers going zip, I hear my own soundtrack. Shutter clicks, steady breathing, the contract cover flipping swish. Afternoon slumps across the glass. The street smears with streaks of light like crayons. I leave the showroom, walk upwind toward the station, hood pulled tight. The drizzle on Lafayette Saint clings to my lashes, skin prickling. That feeling reminds me of the vow I made to myself the day I set foot at JFK. When lonely, go slow. When in doubt, check the paper. I open my phone, recheck the contracts folder. The credit line requiring all family members present. The confirmation email from the legal team, the timestamps. I pocket the phone, grip the camera strap like holding a pulse. At night, I return to Bushwick. Switch on the warm light. The studio goes quiet again. The brick warms. The printer breathes evenly. I wipe the glass of an old lens, lay it next to a still warm cup of coffee. New York keeps me alive with bodega mornings that call me by name, trains where you sit next to a stranger hugging a pizza box, and drizzly afternoons that make you tuck your collar in. In the midst of that, I keep my promise. Never sell the soul. Only license usage. If tomorrow Times Square calls the name wrong, I'll call it back. With black and white paper, with a voice low enough, and with a long breath until the frame opens space for the person who deserves to be in it. Then the gray flag started to appear, all in one afternoon. The pre-press review before going up on the billboard should have been the moment when my heart beat steady like a printer warming up. Yet in the middle of the meeting, Ethan suddenly shut his laptop, frowned, said, "An investor is calling me urgently," then vanished behind the glass door. I stayed with a cup of cold water, watching the row of screens display layers of images stacked like pieces of stained glass. My phone buzzed. A strange email from Vivian to the production side, the subject short and cold. Remove bride, keep symmetry. The CC line didn't include my name even though I was the photographer, the storyteller, and also in the picture. I inhaled slowly, opened my notebook, wrote a small line. Erase the bride, erase the person. No conclusion. Just placing a stone in the palm of my hand to remember its weight. Jules texted, "Keep receipts, as always." I opened the project vault on the sharing platform and saw a file had just appeared. Final vi v7 nobride.psd. The file name was like a whisper trying to hide, but it told everything. I took a screenshot, saved it into the folder Evidence, tagged the time like pressing a sprig of dried grass between pages. Right after that, the launch schedule was suddenly moved up. A new meeting popped up. I wasn't invited. Slack announced Voss Times Square. Hero image final, blazing in the middle of the screen. A busy chat room that suddenly felt closed to me. In New York, red flags aren't red. They're gray. And we pretend not to see them until they slam across an 8-story LED. In the afternoon, misty rain sprinkled Lafayette, I pulled up my hood, headed back to Bushwick, and met a courier waiting in front of the studio door. He handed me a thick, paper-clipped envelope. Family portrait, internal work for hire. White paper, black letters, my signature line blank yet pre-printed with the clause to assign all rights. I read every line, the acrid smell of new paper, and felt my spine go cold not because of the wind. I came to New York with a first contract I wrote for myself. Never sell the soul, only license usage. I looked up. I won't sign. Please send the version that matches the original agreement. The copyright stays with me. The brand has usage within the stated scope. The courier nodded, politely tucked it back into his bag. The studio door closed, and the printer in the room suddenly sounded clear like a heart reminding me, don't rush, document, breathe. I went back to Soho before closing time. White corridor, the thin smell of floor cleaner, neon reflecting on the ceiling. At the end of the hall, a proof print was taped to the wall with blue painter's tape. I stepped closer. The background had been hastily patched. The gradient edges showed seams. Where I had stood by Ethan's left shoulder was now a gap smeared over with a fake patch of sky. I reached my hand toward it without touching, as if afraid of hurting myself in the picture. An assistant passed by, startled, and gave an apologetic smile. Do you need anything else? I shook my head. Give me 5 minutes. After she left, I stood there, remembering Vivian's line. Without her, the picture looks cleaner. Clean, but empty. I stepped back, lifted my phone, and photographed the whole thing. Tape corners, paper edge, proof number. Jules called, and I said softly, "There's a proof on the wall. Is patch sloppy?" He sighed. "Stay calm. The evidence is on your side." Back at the studio, I turned on the warm light, brewed a pot of tea, and laid everything out on the table like arranging a sleepless evening. Screenshots, the email, remove bride, keep symmetry, the no bride file name, the unsigned work for hire paper, the photo of the proof on the wall. I pulled up a chair and added to my notebook. One photograph can't save a person, but one correct clause can save an entire story. I sent Marcus, our media partner, a short message. Need a backup slot on the display system, rights caption file, plus original with all members. He replied with an understood icon, then went quiet. The kind of quiet of someone who's running but will show up at the right moment. Night fell, and Bushwick breathed evenly. I heard the raindrops grow larger, bouncing on the tin roof, and thought of Times Square tomorrow. Big lights, a sea of people, and the countdown clock. I pictured those 47 seconds, imagined the low boom bass and the murmuring crowd. I didn't picture how I would argue. I pictured how I would stand still, put the right file, the right clause, the right truth in the place that needs it. I tucked the USB into my wallet, set it next to the frayed edge MetroCard. If they keep erasing, I will write the name back. Not with a loud voice, but with the signature I laid down from day one. Signing with clarity, with respect, and with a breath long enough for the photograph to make room for the person who belongs in the frame. To stand firm, I need a table to lay down the papers. I began gathering the truth like picking up shards of glass after a break. On the wooden table in the Bushwick studio, I spread out all the documents. First was the licensing agreement between me and Voss. I had read it, underlined it, and signed it from day one. Not work for hire. It was a non-exclusive license with clear conditions, and I retained all copyright as well as the rights to my own image. I turned to the exact page I once circled in red. Scope, term, crediting, and the clause prohibiting edits that distort the subjects present in the photo. Next to it was the copyright registration receipt from the USCO, a simple sheet, but the legal roof over the photograph. I photographed it, named the file usco-receipt.pdf, and exhaled a long breath as if laying a foundation stone. Jules sent me the forwarded email chain from the retouching system. In it was a line Vivian wrote cold as steel. Clone out Maya entirely. I read slowly, let the 3 words erase me completely, linger long enough before I dragged that email into the evidence folder. On frame.io, the version history showed clearly. The original had me standing by Ethan's left shoulder. The subsequent version successively pasted sky over my spot, hastily feathered the edges, and renamed the file in the style of Final YV5 Segu V7, No Bride. The metadata recorded who uploaded at what time, from which IP address. An entire digital trail showing the photo was not naturally that way. It was altered deliberately, with footprints left behind. Noah, a vendor in the production chain, contacted me privately with a short message I will remember for a long time. "This feels wrong. Saving an archive copy." That sentence was like a hand extended in a dark hallway. He attached the internal archive from before No Bride appeared, along with the system log noting who flipped the approve flag. I thanked him and stuck a blue label on the corner of the file, a small habit to remind myself. There are still decent people inside the machine. In the afternoon, I met Ava Patel, the lawyer I trust, at a cafe on Lafayette. She opened the file folder, her voice low and firm, reading like someone setting posts for a porch about to be placed in the right spot. Clause 2.1. Ava tapped her nail on the line I once underlined. Any derivative must preserve credited subjects unless written consent is obtained. She looked up, straight. They don't have your consent. Both copyright and right of publicity are being violated. I nodded, my throat going a little dry but my heart easing. There is a kind of voice that doesn't need to shout to carry far. I said softly, as if letting a stone fall from my hand, and they used my face to sell themselves, then erased me when they were done. Ava didn't console. She confirmed, "We have the email ordering your face removed. Intent to violate is clear." We arranged the table as if preparing a small exhibit. Ava placed the licensing agreement first, Exhibit A. The stamp's thunk sounded just enough to change the room's air. To the right, she laid out the USCO receipt and the metadata version history, printed with before and after images. Exhibit B. Another thunk. Finally, Vivian's email chain and Noah's message, plus the proof print on the wall that I had photographed. Exhibit C. Thunk. 3 red stamps lay side by side like 3 drum beats, keeping my heart steady again. We rehearsed a short statement in case we needed to go public. Ava would read the clause in an even voice, and I would only need to add exactly 1 human line. I am in the story, and they bent the frame to erase me. Then step back and let the paperwork do the rest. Ava instructed, "Don't argue in hallways, just point to the words." I wrote in my notebook, "Say enough. Let the words do the work of the words." Before leaving the cafe, I opened my phone. Slack showed Hero Image Final again. I didn't open it. I looked through the pane of misty rain, remembering what I had said in Bushwick. 1 photograph can't save a person, but 1 correct clause can save an entire story. In my backpack, Exhibit ABC lay still like 3 paving stones. I shouldered the backpack, took a breath, and decided to walk back to the studio. Once more, I would choose the simplest path. Keep calm, keep the evidence, and when the time came, lay them on the table, right in the middle of Times Square, so the photograph would give back the place of the one who was cut out. I didn't need anyone's approval first. I only needed the truth to stand upright when the lights came on. The dinner before the event took place in a private, wood-floored room. White tablecloths lit up under candlelight. Forks and knives clinked like a low drumbeat. The server set down plates of steak. The smell of hot butter mingled with black pepper rising, but my throat was dry. Vivian sipped wine, her ringed finger tapping lightly against the stem, and said as if brushing past a speck of dust, "Press wants a clean family line." The word clean dropped onto the table light and cold. Ethan sat to my left, eyes on his phone and then elsewhere, his silence stretching like a mistuned string. I set the thin folder in the middle of the table, just paper, but the only voice I trusted. "My name is in the metadata and on the contract," I said slowly, afraid the words would slip from my hands. Vivian looked up, her mouth curving into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "This is family, not court." I kept my calm, didn't push my chair back, didn't raise my voice. "And this is my image." Ethan exhaled, the tip of his shoe nudging the chair leg, his voice breaking the way someone's does when caught between two shores. "Are you threatening my mother right before launch?" I looked straight into his eyes, the eyes that once made me believe I'd found the right place to breathe, and said, "No, I'm protecting myself." The air thinned a layer. The server setting down bread hesitated half a beat as if mishearing a wrong note. I opened the folder, pointing to the line I'd underlined with a highlighter. Non-exclusive license. Retain subject credit. No altering subjects without written consent. "I granted rights to tell a true story," I said. "Not the right to erase a person from her own life." Vivian set her glass down. The tiny clink so small it was almost not there. "The campaign needs to be tidy. The public likes straight lines." I folded the folder shut, resting my hand on it as if placing a stone on a ledge. "A straight line is not drawn by erasing a name." Ethan said my name, pleading but off course. "Do you have to make this a big deal? After the launch we'll talk." I shook my head. Some things, if you wait past midnight, turn into a habit of silence. I don't want to teach my heart that. I stood, the chair giving a soft squeak on the wood floor. "Enjoy your meal, everyone," I said, my voice still even. I left the napkin folded into a crane, walked down the narrow corridor lined with black and white photos, past the bar that smelled of burnt orange, and out the door. The New York night wind slid straight down my collar, as if peeling the gloss off my skin. I texted Jules. "From now on, contact by email. Send the contract and USEO receipt to Marcus. Turn off all internal chat channels tonight." He replied with a single, "Got it." On the way home, I called the Bushwick studio owner to ask to push next month's deposit a few days, because a payment from Voss was on hold due to scheduling adjustments. "Okay," she said, "but try before Monday." I thanked her, stopped under a bodega awning to avoid the drizzle, and bit into the half bagel left in my bag. The dry floriness caught in my throat, but it reminded me I can still live on very simple things. The door opened with the familiar click of the lock, the living room darker than usual. Ethan's coat wasn't on the hook. His shoes weren't slouched by the mat. I set the camera bag on a chair, poured a glass of water, and listened to the heater breathing steadily down the hall. My phone buzzed. His text, "I'm staying at my mother's tonight. Focus on launch tomorrow." I read it once, deleted the reply draft, and turned off the screen. At the kitchen table, I opened the folder again. Contract, copyright registration receipt, the proof photo, the email, clone out Maya entirely. I lined them up in a straight row like a makeshift bridge, just enough to get me across the night without slipping. I went into the bedroom, turned off the main light, switched on the soft amber lamp, sat on the edge of the bed and breathed 4 in, 4 out. No one witnesses a person putting her heart back in its place. It has nothing to film, nothing to hook an audience. But in the morning, I would stand in the middle of Times Square with a voice just loud enough, and the photo would have to make room for the person who'd been cut out. I pulled the blanket up, didn't cry. I wrote 5 lines in my notebook as I do every day. One good thing, one hard thing, one thing I learned, one thank you, one small promise. The last line that night was a slow voice, like placing a period. They erased me from the frame. I erased them from the right to decide me. The next morning, I called Jules and Marcus to a small cafe by Bryant Park, spread a whole pile of papers across the wooden table like laying out a simple chessboard. The licensing contract, the USCO receipt, the email clone out Maya entirely, the proof print from the wall. Marcus sat down, took off his headphones, lowered his voice. There's one thing you need to know. The Times Square media buy comes with a creator approval clause. Reason: when pitching content, you were listed as co-producer, so you signed an addendum. Under Skyline's terms, if there's a violation of IP or persona, they have the right to pause the broadcast for verification. I looked at him, feeling like someone turned on a light in a dark room. Not a miracle, just a switch that had existed all along. Jules slid a to-do list toward me. You bundle the evidence into 3 packets. I'll contact Skyline Tech to open a fallback path. Marcus handles the media partners. We nodded almost at the same time. The counterattack triangle formed on the coffee-scented tabletop. At noon, Noah texted me. 5 minutes to meet? We stood by an emergency exit in Soho, cold wind blowing through the crack of the door. Noah looked around, then pulled from his jacket pocket a USB wrapped in blue tape. I don't feel right about this. In here are the original comp, the email ordering your removal, and the render log with timestamps. He spoke fast as if afraid he'd change his mind. I didn't hug him, didn't scold. I just placed a hand on his shoulder for a second. Thank you for choosing right. The USB dropped into my palm like another stone added to the bridge still being paved. I texted Jules. Got original comp plus render log. He replied with a lightning bolt icon. Not loud, but enough force. In the afternoon, I met Ava Patel at a small office on Lafayette. She adjusted her glasses, skimmed the files, then got to work like a tailor adept at fitting. Step 1, DMCA. Take down any unauthorized digital versions distributed to other media houses. Step 2, a cease and desist letter to Voss and Vivian. Stop all alterations. Stop releasing the version that erases you. Step 3, send to Skyline. Invoke the creator approval clause, plus the right of publicity violation. Request a temporary pause if they don't revert to the version with you. I nodded. Ava handed me a bound exhibit packet, the licensing contract on top, the USCO receipt, and version history in the middle, the chain of deletion emails plus the original comp at the end. Bring it to be notarized, she said. Let the stamp speak in place of emotion. We stopped by a nearby notary. Each page was pressed with a thunk, flat and cold, yet strangely warming my heart. Everything now had its place. Marcus called Skyline's legal, speaking in a soft but precise voice. Creator approval has not been met, and there are signs of a persona violation. He sent me a private internal memo. If there's a breach, Skyline can switch to a backup source, by policy. In parallel, Jules uploaded the original comp and the correct caption credit, with rights attribution. I sat in front of my laptop at the Bushwick studio, created a folder, Revive Tassie Final, and renamed files carefully like folding a dress shirt before hanging it to dry. On the fogged window, I wrote with a fingertip, "Stay calm." In the evening, Ava hit send on a batch of letters. DMCA notices to the distribution endpoints, cease and desist to Voss, Vivian, and the agency. A formal letter attaching the creator approval addendum to Skyline. I e-signed, then printed 2 copies to submit hard copies tomorrow. My phone buzzed. Marcus reported, Skyline has opened the backup gate. If they don't restore the correct version, they'll pause and run our file to maintain compliance. I looked toward the window. Bushwick still drizzled, yellow light clinging to the brick wall. I poured myself water, opened my notebook, and wrote a sentence for myself. New York taught me 2 things. Don't fear a signature and don't beg for a place in the frame you shot. Late at night, I laid the table out again. Noah's USB, the notarized exhibit packet, the underlined contract, the email clone out Maya entirely, the USCO receipt, the creator approval addendum. Everything lay in a straight line like steps of a staircase. I texted Jules and Marcus, see you at Times Square, 1930. If they keep their word, we smile. If they sidestep, we flip to backup. 2 scene ticks popped up. I turned off most of the lights, leaving the studio with a single warm lamp. No more shaking. Tomorrow, amid a sea of people and 8-story lights, I won't argue. I'll just plug the truth into its proper socket and let the power run itself. Enough. Time for the lights to turn on. The music pounds like a train rolling over a bridge. I start the morning by gently wiping the lens glass, slinging the camera strap over my shoulder, then stepping into the alley. In Bushwick, sunlight slants across red brick walls, dust turning into glittering specks. I shoot a small editorial for a local brand. Some portrait frames, some hand movements, cotton shirts billowing in the wind. Each click feels like tightening an inner lock. I'm not only the person in the frame, I'm still the one behind the lens. Back at the studio, I open the window to let the smell of freshly roasted coffee rush in, then lay the papers out on the table. Ava Patel arrives on time, hair neatly tied, a yellow highlighter in hand. She marks each line like tracing the outline of a house. Non-exclusive license grant, mandatory credit, no deletion of subjects without consent. This part is the backbone, Ava says softly. I nod, feeling a pillar rise in me too. In the afternoon, Marcus pulls me over to a small office by Bryant Park. The room dims, 3 large screens simulating the Times Square broadcast system. He plugs in my file, hits the failover test button like flicking a breaker. The screens jump from the bad version to the correct one. The credit caption pops up in the lower corner, my name clearly visible. Plan A is they fix it themselves. Plan B, Skyline pauses and then runs our file per the clause. Marcus says, calm as a helmsman who knows the tides. I look at the 3 screens, inhale deeply, and hear my heartbeat sync with the blinking of the text. Jules waits at the corner bodega, sets a bottle of water and a handwritten note in front of me. Soundbite 12:15s. We rehearse a short line for the press. Speak slowly, clearly, and don't let emotion pull the strings. Your line, Jules reminds me, has to be one everyone understands, even someone just walking by. I lean against the brick wall, eyes straight into the phone camera as he taps record. I'm not asking for the spotlight. I'm asking for the exact frame we signed for, with paperwork, not noise. We play it back, adjust the breathing, swap one word to soften it, then record again. I learn to place my voice in my chest, not push it up my throat. Learn to pause half a beat before landing the line. Learn to smile just a little so the words lose their sharp edges. Come evening, I head back to Bushwick and turn on the warm light. Ava sits across the table, reviewing the cease and desist and DMCA letters one last time. The notarized stamps lie flat, red like tiny waypoints on a map. I pack Exhibit ABC, check Noah's USB, test the batteries again, and save another backup to a hard drive. Marcus texts, failover okay. Jules sends an interview schedule in case the press asks. Tiana drops a shield icon in the small group chat. I smile, picturing her still at the lab, blouse smelling faintly of alcohol, but her heart standing on my side. Midway through, I mute everything, brew a mint tea, roll out the mat, and meditate for 5 minutes. I count 4 in, 4 out, lay a hand on my chest and then move it to my belly, like a shift change between 2 guards, the heart and the breath. That quiet moment helps me see everything more clearly. I'm not seeking justice alone. I'm leading my team. Ava is the straight-lined wording. Marcus is the hand on the switch. Jules keeps the tempo so my words don't skid. Tiana is the brave seal in a long corridor. I open my notebook and write 5 lines as I do every day. One good thing, the test ran smoothly. One hard thing, the sadness still lingers. One thing I learned, reading clauses aloud makes them less scary. One thank you to those who stood beside me. One small promise, tomorrow speak slowly, clearly, without shaking, so all of Times Square can hear. Late at night, the rain pours and then stops. I stand at the window watching car lights draw long streaks on the wet road, my hand gripping the USB like holding a small seed. New York taught me 2 things: don't fear a signature, and don't beg for a place in the frame you shot. If they erase me, I will put myself back with black and white paperwork and a voice that knows its rhythm. I turn off the lights, leaving a single desk lamp glowing dimly. Tomorrow will be loud, but tonight is quiet enough for me to shore up what matters most. Kindness doesn't make me weak. It makes me steadfast. So when I step into the crowd, I don't need to shout. I just need to stand firm, load the correct file, and let the truth speak. Times Square at night blazed like a giant heart. The MC counted down on the side stage, the words 10, 9, 8, blending with the faint smell of smoke and the murmur of people like waves. I stood amid a sea of lights, my hands interlaced to keep my 4 in 4 out breathing. Vivian and Ethan stood by the red carpet, smiling politely at the press, camera flashes glinting at the corners of their eyes like a glitter shower. When the clock hit 3, the giant billboard lit up with the version they had chosen, the one that erased me. I looked at the void next to Ethan's left shoulder, the patched background so rough that anyone with a sharp eye could see the seam. My heart stalled half a beat and then steadied. Marcus stepped up close to the media control mic, dark coat, his voice even as if reading a safety instruction. Under Clause 3.2, Creator Approval, media is required to display the authorized version. He gave a small nod. The tech took the order. USB plugged in. A small green light came on like a blink of assent. The board switched content. The screen stuttered ever so slightly and then changed. The original photo appeared. I stood in the center position, my left hand resting lightly on the shoulder of Ethan's jacket, eyes looking straight into the lens. The background returned to its clean transparency. No more patch marks. The lower right corner popped a credit line, sleek yet clear. Photo, C. Maya Chen. I heard the crowd buzzing, people nudging each other, cameras firing in bursts like a swarm of fireflies stirred awake. I didn't look up at Vivian, but I could feel the small movement along the red carpet, a wine glass pausing midair, a few crew faces flicking toward one another as if asking with their eyes, "What just happened?" The MC awkwardly swallowed, then sidestepped into the sponsor thanks. The bass in the sound system had just dipped, opening a quiet pocket wide enough for words to pass through. Vivian moved closer to the control table, her voice low but sharp like a stitch line. "You don't have the right to alter the broadcast schedule." Marcus didn't change expression. He spoke slowly, loud enough for the auxiliary mic to pick up. We have the right to remove IP infringing content against the artist. And the artist is standing here. He tilted his head toward me. In that moment, I felt as if someone had put a hand on my back, very light but firm enough. Jules handed me a handheld mic, his eyes reminding me, 15 seconds, slow and clear. I stepped up half a step, took a deep breath, and let the line come out from my chest, not my throat. My name is not a filter you can erase. The short sentence fell onto the square like a round note, popped up in the eyes of a few people nearby. They nodded. 1, 2, then 5, then 10 nods. Someone whistled. A sprinkling of applause rose, connecting into a small wave and then thickening. I looked up at the photo. The light exactly as on the day of the shoot. My jawline not bent, the story not flipped. I stood there, needing no more words. Marcus signaled the tech to lock the approved content to keep stray hands off it. Vivian turned away half a step, murmuring something to PR. Ethan looked at me across the bodies, with an expression complicated: shame, relief, and something like wanting to get back to the safe place of the truth. I did not reach out my hand. I simply kept the mic low, breathed evenly, and let New York night do its job. Swallow the noise, and give back the sound of the things that stand firm. The cameras flashed a few more rounds, then slowed on their own when people saw the image wasn't changing anymore. A group of student travelers raised their phones to film the big screen, reading the credit line, "Photo C. Maya Chen" aloud, as if reciting a dictation exercise. I heard an invisible thunk in my chest, like a seal coming down, like a lock snapping into the right catch. I glanced over to thank Marcus and Jules with my eyes. No hug needed, just a nod. At the edge of the red carpet, the MC picked the beat back up. Congratulations on the launch. The bass drop hit right on cue, and this time the shouts didn't carry confusion. The scattered cheers thickened, then swelled. I stepped back from the lights to give the stage over to their part. I wasn't looking for the spotlight. I was only demanding the exact frame we had signed. The night wind was cool, the smell of popcorn from a street cart at the corner blending with the faint smoke, making me think of Bushwick this morning and the small wooden table where I had lined up each piece of evidence. I laid my hand on my chest and counted 4 in, 4 out. Up there, amid millions of points of light, my name was no longer a thin filter layer that someone could drag the erase slider to the left. It was part of the story, as on the day I pressed the shutter, as Clause 3.2 wrote, and as my heart has always wanted, slow, clear, steady, so that all of Times Square can hear. The hearing room was bright white like a fresh sheet of paper, a long wooden table, chairs in straight rows, the recorder a small red dot. Everything unfolded quickly and neatly, like rapid-fire editing. Ava Patel set the case folder down, opening it layer by layer. "Exhibit A," she said, voice even. "The licensing contract. Not work for hire. Only a conditional, non-exclusive grant. I retain copyright and the rights to my own image." Exhibit B. An email from Vivian to the retouch department. "Remove bride, clone out Maya entirely." Exhibit C. A USB containing render logs and version history. The original has me. Subsequent versions delete me. Rename ought no bride. Timestamps. Approver. Exhibit D. The USEO registration receipt. The stamp went thunk onto each stack of papers. The clerk's hand flipped the minutes with a soft swish. The conference room camera blinked its recording light. I sat upright, my fingertip resting on the edge of the table to remember the 4 in, 4 out breath. No anger needed, only clarity. A board member peered over his glasses. Why was the credit not kept as agreed? The Voss representative flustered, talked about aesthetics, about clean composition, but the before-after comparison on the screen answered instead. The patched background showed edges. My name vanished from the credit corner. The clone-out email appeared verbatim. Marcus, the media partner, confirmed the Times Square broadcast terms tie in, creator approval. Skyline has the right to pause if there are signs of IP persona infringement. Jules submitted additional logs of the upload of the compliant backup file. Ava read exactly one line in Section 2.1. Any derivative version must preserve credited subjects unless written consent is obtained. The whole room fell silent for half a beat, as if waiting for the final seal. The decision was read quickly, short, clear. Voss must pay overdue royalties and statutory damages for infringement of my copyright and right of publicity, plus attorney's fees and notarization costs. The current media contract with Voss is terminated. Skyline issues a public statement reaffirming respect for artists' rights, updating the mandatory creator approval procedure. Voss must post a public apology and fix credits on all channels, from billboards and website to social media. Deadline 72 hours with penalties if late. Vivian is temporarily suspended by the internal board from her PR role for 6 months to review professional ethics and retrain on image rights standards. Ethan sat still, then quietly signed the separation papers. The door to separation opened, the remaining steps belonging to the ending of us later. I didn't say much. I only signed for the stamped copies. My fingers trembled slightly, then stilled as the ink dried. When Voss's lawyer proposed a soft PR solution, instead of an apology, the board shook their heads. Remedy the content correctly, in the right place, on time. Outside the pane, midday Manhattan blurred in light rain. Inside, the secretary's voice read each resolution line. The recorder blinked red. I looked at my name printed neatly on the minute's header, feeling as if a taut string long held had finally been tied off. Leaving the room, Marcus handed me Skyline's statement. We respect artists. When there is deviation, our duty is to restore the authorized version. Jules texted a single line. Credit is back where it belongs. Ava tapped the folder lightly. For the rest, let time do its work. I stepped onto the stoop, misting rain catching in my hair, the street buzzing as usual. In my bag, the exhibits lay flat and heavy, but my heart was light. Not because someone lost, but because rules stood up. That night, Times Square still shone. The correct photo ran a full loop. The line, Photo C. Maya Chen, lay calmly in the lower right corner, like a small signature that doesn't need to shout. I closed my eyes, letting the sound of people and the smell of popcorn blend into a warm backdrop. Some things don't need fireworks. They need signatures, seals, and transfers made on time. VO, cold, fair. Justice doesn't need to shout. It signs, and it pays. Late afternoon in Bryant Park, the wind sweeps through the treetops, making leaves fall in slow spirals. I stand behind the camera, shooting a group of young designers who have just released their first collection. Each of them has a wool scarf wrapped around, hands cupping steaming hot chocolate, eyes bright like little lights in the park. I tell them, take a long breath, then press the shutter. Click, click. The confident faces appear clearly, no filter needed. Up above, an LED board runs a behind-the-scenes segment from last week's event, briefly showing the photo with me standing in the middle of the frame, the credit resting quiet in the bottom right corner. Photo C. Maya Chen. I look up for a second, smile. There's nothing left to argue. What needed to be said has been said by the contract, by the seal, by the way we stood firm together in the noisy streets. I fold down the lens hood, Pour half a still warm cup of chocolate for one person whose hands are shaking from the cold. Then sit on a wooden bench, watching yellow leaves slide past my shoes. Sometimes memory runs back to Times Square. The countdown, the USB, the short line, "My name is not a filter you can erase." But now, it's only a small marker marking the path I've taken. From being cut out of the photo to calmly putting my name back on the right line. Best revenge? Live well. And sign smart. If you've ever been erased from the frame, rewrite the contract and put yourself back. No need to shout. Just the right words and a steady breath. If you believe credit matters, comment the word TIMES. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share the channel. Revenge and resolve to catch the next twists, stories where we heal with the truth, with kindness, and with a signature placed in the right spot. Thank you for staying to the end. See you in the next photo, where you too will stand in the middle of your own frame.